Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order at 6:21. We have the minutes. Did anybody, or I read them, did anybody else? You don't even have to admit it right now.
I read them ages ago.
Yeah, right. Jessica did a good job, by the way, when she's watching this. We'll make sure everybody knows, or she knows what we like how she does it. Are there any changes? Does anyone have any changes to the minutes? I think the one thing is putting Denise, we'll have her put, do you have an E on the end of her name, don't you? Yeah, so that's just one change. Does anyone have any changes, or does someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
So Maya makes a motion to approve the minutes of the April 27th, 2023 meeting. All those in favor? Anyone opposed?
I'll abstain.
One abstention.
Thank
All right, so meeting minutes are approved.
1, 2, 3, 5, nothing.
Well,
And one
four,
abstention.
401. Oh, no, yeah, you're right, 501. Yeah, we're 6 of us.
Yeah.
You're right, there's 6.
Yeah,
That's all right. I can't count.
Now we have Spoon. Why don't we go through, I'm assuming Spoon, you're here to talk to us about your experience. Did you get the memo, email from
Yeah.
Peter? Okay. Are you prepared tonight to talk to us?
Yeah, I'm not sure what to talk about,
Okay.
but there's a parcel of suggestions,
Oh, good.
and what I thought was, well, I don't know what you said. I was hoping you would
Yeah,
give me some
yeah.
direction if you wanted me to talk, but I thought otherwise you could read through that and I could return if there are things in there that you feel I can be helpful elaborating on.
I think that might be the best idea, because then we're not having you say something that you put here, and we may actually have more questions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what.
Yeah.
It sounds like you didn't have any expectation of what you really wanted from me.
Well, what we're trying to do, and that's why I think this is a good way to do it, is Maya and I have gone through everything that we could find on how the
I can be
previous,
helpful then.
yeah, how the previous charters came about. And
Okay,
basically, it's a mishmash of agendas and meeting minutes and
People's handwritten notes,
notes, drafts.
so you got the box that had all the materials from the last charter revision.
We have, we
No.
have a variety. We have some, the bulk of the stuff we have is from the 1980s charter change.
Oh,
Then we have some on
1996.
1996. We've unearthed something
Okay.
not from the town
All right.
from 2011.
there is a large carton which contains everything from the very extensive in the last change. We were at it for 3 years, 73 meetings, tons of references, writings, all kinds of stuff. And it was very carefully preserved and boxed up and left in the town manager's office.
Now, was this from 2011?
Well, when did we, it was probably closer by the time it was all over. It might have been 12 or 13 because it got,
Yeah, there was a
you
special.
probably know the story, it got stuck in Montpelier for a year with no
Yeah,
action.
because there was a special town meeting in 2011
Yes.
to do the charter change and then go to Montpelier. So we haven't found that box though.
Okay,
So-
well, then,
We
I
have-
tried,
Well,
you have to find who was secretary then. Maybe Jan, I don't know.
well, that gives us, what's good about it is you've given us this, which will help us.
Yeah,
figure out what we actually
Right.
need from you. And I
The
have,
other thing, and I mentioned it in there, well, there's probably a lot of other things. Are you working with a copy of Title 24 annotated? No. Title 24 annotated is a volume that contains every charter in the state of Vermont. And there's a ton of interesting stuff in there. Just, and
Six or six
let's see, what else?
6:15. Oh.
I don't know, we used to do, we went to, we took the entire charter commission to the annual Town Managers Association meeting, and we did a workshop there on town government. And very well attended, really lively debate, and it was very worthwhile doing. So I hope you do things like that. We had the director of elections for the state down, we got mayors down, everybody, we had a lot of guests, and we learned a lot.
now, I wanna fill, the actual chair of our committee and where we are. We've done the minutes, and
I apologize, I thought it was 6:30.
It's okay. You didn't miss much, we didn't
It's all right.
start.
Some of us went up to 6.
Yeah, there were people here at
We
6.
thought it was 6. so.
We were all confused.
Well, we can put on the red light.
I know,
Nobody
yeah.
can talk anymore.
Well, and what we did is, Patrick had sent out emails to some prior charter commission
Okay.
members, and Spoon has come to the meeting, but he is, I think what we've all sort of figured is the best way to do it. Spoon has nicely done memo for us
Oh, excellent.
with thoughts, and maybe what we do is we all take the chance to look at the memo and then have him come back so we can ask questions based on,
And that cannot be, I am leaving town on Saturday for 6 weeks.
okay.
But you're probably not in a big hurry, so
We can talk to you when you get back.
you can talk to me when I am at your service.
And then we can do digging on the 2011 box.
Clarifying question, would you describe that box as just the work of 2011 charter?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'll go back and see what else I may have in my files. I pretty much cleaned them out to keep all the records together. And I know what you're looking at from the pitiful 1996, which did nothing but change the gender pronouns after meeting for a couple of years.
Yeah, I have a summary.
Yeah, it wasn't much. There was very, very little. And the first charter, modern charter, was 84.
Yeah, and it was a big box.
It's a good sized carton, and it should be there somewhere.
Well, we'll look for it,
Yeah.
and then Kate and I can go through it.
Yeah. All right, so with this spoon, we'll take this and we'll get, David's here, should keep still taking
You
over,
can
but, we'll take this, we'll distribute it to all of us.
Okay.
And then we can figure out when you can come back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if there's a quick question, I'll be here one more day. You can reach me till by email through tomorrow night.
Thanks for putting that together, Spoon.
Yeah, well, it's a work in progress.
Excellent.
All righty.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Safe trip.
Have fun.
All right.
So I guess the next item on the agenda is charter changes from 2011.
Yeah, yes. I'm gonna take this, and then Maya has an update on 1996 that happened after we had this typed up. I don't know, like Spoon is talking about the big box. What I found, because I work at the Commons newspaper, and I happened to be going through files, and there's this handy dandy file, it's a charter on it. So I opened it up, and it is information about the charter that was changed at the town meeting in 2011. So it's the one Spoon is talking about, but all this is, and it's actually really helpful, is how it went to town meeting. the changes that were proposed. I think you folks had, isn't it in here? Maureen?
Yes.
Yeah.
It should say January 22nd, 2011, special representative
Yeah.
town meeting at the top.
Yeah, and these are just for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, and just this, what this is, this document that you have are the changes that were proposed by the Charter Commission that we talked about at representative town meeting. And what I have, and I have to do this, and I'll do this and put it in a file, is go through and just mark which ones passed and which ones didn't. We don't have, you know, if we find the box, we'll have everything that leads up to this, but at least we have this.
And we have that draft.
Yeah, and what the other thing that came out of it, which was great, is some material that will give us an idea of maybe how we should organize ourselves when we get that far. They have a draft that has been redlined with what the proposed changes are, and if something is moved. I'll show this to Patrick, it's really exciting. So it's really a helpful example of a way that we can keep ourselves organized.
Could we each receive a color copy
Yes.
of that?
We
please?
got, do you have a color copier, Patrick? Or not?
Do we have a color copier? We don't. I believe there's a color printer down at the planning office. Okay.
Well, we can maybe, I don't know if you stand,
I'm
somebody.
going with just like a PDF or something.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right, I can scan it, we can
Oh.
scan it as a PDF,
Yeah.
Okay.
and will it come out color, well, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
We'll get everybody a color copy,
Great.
because it's really helpful to look how they did it.
Yeah.
It's also helpful that I have the, and we can eventually give this to Patrick for the town, that the town commented, you know, as department heads on, this is when Barb Sontag was town manager, went through and said, here's our thoughts on Article 1. You know what I mean? So there's like a concise thing that was handed out to Brattleboro citizens. So this went to town meeting members, saying what the town department heads or whomever thought about this. So it's really organized in a nice way for us. And then there's something that, a few words of welcome that the Charter Commission sent to town meeting members. So it's actually, I think, besides being really interesting, and then I'll go through and say what passed and what didn't, it sort of gives us the final organized way to bring it to town meeting. And it's really like the one thing we've never found in any of the boxes, of all the boxes we have.
And you found it at the comments?
Comments, I'm like, wow, this is like super exciting. So, you know, it's sort of like
And,
what,
and Hannah said she could do something like that
yeah,
for us.
do redlining and greenlining or however. So I think this is helpful in that sense. And then, you know, Spoon can give us, if we find the box and look at this, we might be able to get how it came to these things. A lot of them didn't pass, because you'll notice when you go through, there's not 7 select board members, or there weren't 7 school board members, so a lot of them didn't happen, but, so that's sort of the update on 2011, is that it gives us a really good roadmap on the final stages when we get there.
Is there some reason to believe that there might be another box of material?
Yes.
Spoon is telling
Around here.
us.
Well, he says that there is, but hasn't there been some real search through
Yeah.
town
Yes.
hall to look
Yeah.
for it?
Yeah, that's sort of what's weird, is that Patrick has, you know, has been looking everywhere, but Spoon swears that there's a box. But,
And I know Sue Fillion and planning have looked all over.
They looked as well.
Yeah.
yeah, everybody's been looking, so, but, I don't know, Spoon's gonna think about it some more. So
So,
now-
1996, I just gave everybody a copy of the timeline. There were no minutes that I could find. That little accordion folder there is all we have on 1996. And in it was a legal pad that somebody took running notes on. And that's what I used to produce this.
So where was this book found?
It was in the box with the 1980 stuff,
Oh, okay.
but we didn't find it until
After preparation. Yeah.
So I had trouble reading whoever took these notes handwriting. And they kind of, I think they were for themselves, actually, and they just kind of wrote down random thoughts, and some of them didn't make sense, and there were no agendas and no minutes. So the timeline, I mean, this is about the best I could do. I also found this thing that says report of the Charter Review Commission. And this was what was presented to the board, to the select board. And I'm not sure any of these passed.
Spoon suggested that nothing passed except making the language gender neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want to be more successful.
So this is another way that something could be presented. So I think until we find that box, I think that's all the history that Kate and I have found.
I want to thank the two of you for spending that additional time after going through the initial box and helping us to understand how we got from there to here.
Well, when I found this file, I got all excited, and I thought there's one other person in the entire world who is excited as I am. So I immediately emailed him.
Is there any questions at this point about that information we've just got about the last two charter revision processes? So the next item on the agenda is town meeting history. It looks like we've got an article here. I understand that there's wasn't there a video that he produced, or was it just an article?
Just this,
prepared?
yeah.
Oh, well, that's excellent.
Yeah.
So-
It's really good, too.
One of the issues that we've addressed and wanted to understand is how we got to representative town meeting from standard town meeting. And so I'm glad we were able to locate this piece that Chris paired, and that we now got it distributed, so that can provide additional background to everybody about why it is that the town meeting currently is structured as it is.
I was saying earlier, I don't know who was here, that it seems like every charter review commission has looked at RTM and talked about it at length and decided not to change it. So, for whatever that means, but as Denise pointed out, it's good to ask.
So the other two items that are on the agenda are to set a regular meeting date and time and a tentative schedule for the remainder of 2023. And I think probably addressing number 6 first, tentative schedule for the remainder of 2023, is really a preliminary or a foundation for talking about setting regular meeting dates and times. So I want to explain why that tentative schedule for the remainder of 2023 is on the agenda here and walk through. Do we have a handout that lists the various meetings, or nothing like that got prepared?
So something like that did get prepared. I've got something. This is a what I would call a mock-up of something that might be distributable via social media. The dates are now out of step,
thank
and
you.
the topics are potentially up for discussion. I don't know, but if we can settle in on a series of topics and a series of dates, we can begin to distribute something along these lines. And if it would be at all helpful, I don't know whether you wish to be once a month, twice a month, but if I knew the frequency of your meetings and the folks that you wished to try and coordinate with, I could do some work in the background if that would be helpful to try and, all right, they can't meet here, but they can meet here, and these people can be here, but not there, and maybe come back to your next meeting with, all right, this is what I've been able to lay out for the remainder of the year.
So let me explain the genesis of this handout that Patrick put together. And thank you for this. It's nice in graphic form like this. So following town meeting and our April meeting, we didn't get a meeting scheduled in for some period of time. And that's now obvious. It's now August, you know? And I began to question why it was that another meeting got set in and how the work was going to be planned out. And I sort of came to the realization that most all town boards and committees and commissions are responding to workload that arises from the day-to-day business of the town, right? So select board doesn't start by setting its own agenda. Select board hears from town manager, and then, who's gathering up information from all the departments about matters that need to be on the docket to be discussed and addressed and decided on. And it's really the same for almost all the municipal boards that we deal with. There's paid staff who's responsible for dealing with the business of the town, and they funnel information to the relevant committee, and that's how agendas get set. There may be some exceptions to that. The Energy Committee, for example, I think maybe one where, at least in its inception, it wasn't necessarily supported by a docket of business that needed to be decided on with a paid staff member who was pushing that along, although now there is that position in place, but the Energy Committee predated that. But DRB, I was on for however many years I was allowed, 7 or 9, and Maya for years on Planning Commission. We were on Select Board. Peter got an overview of all those committees, and all of them have agendas presented to them. And I think what was happening is that when one meeting was over, I kind of realized that the responsibility was sort of falling on me to figure out what was going to happen next, and there wasn't like any clear direction, body of work that needed to be addressed from meeting to meeting. So I asked Kate to meet with me so that we could begin mapping out a plan for the work we would be doing going forward in order to marshal the potential things that we would be addressing in the Charter Review Commission process, because this first part of our work has really been exploratory in nature. How did we get here? What are the prior revision processes? What is the town charter? And what's the representative town meetings genesis? So we came up with these generally 8 categories of work where we would like to gather additional information. And I think there actually was one earlier step, which is this meeting, which was to finish going over the various prior charter revision processes and to get an overview of the change to representative town meeting. So that's really the first of 9 meetings that we had communicated that Kate and I thought was a good way to proceed. So we then had talked about presentation with VLCT about other Vermont charters, because again, that is background information that Peter had indicated he thought would be a useful backdrop for us. I think that Patrick tried to reach out, and he was preliminarily unsuccessful in getting any sort of commitment or even willingness to engage with us in dealing with that. But that seemed to be a good first step in terms of gathering additional information. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's been turnover at the league, and the 2 people who would have been the most likely to be helpful to us about this. Both have left, one has retired and one has moved on to a different job. So we could work with the remaining league staff and sort of get the best available support for this if we want to go that way. I think it actually might be sufficient for us to look at the other charters ourselves, and I'm not suggesting that all of us do that. I had offered back when we first began, and I'm happy to reiterate the offer, subject to a little bit of time consideration I'd like to talk about, but I've begun to look at other charters of other communities in the state from Title 24, and I'm happy to do that in a more systematic fashion and bring a summary of that to consideration at one of our future meetings. I need some time to work on that. I'd be happy to have a partner, the way the two of you have teamed up on the historical research. I think that would be good both as a check and balance and just, you know, broader perspective when we bring it back to the team here. But there is a lot of interesting material out there. There's a lot of action that other communities have taken to seek authority from the state, and sometimes been successful at being granted authority that isn't widely held among the municipalities of the state, and we want to borrow from that in places where it looks appropriate to Brattleboro.
So that's an outstanding action item that we had talked about and that Peter has focused on for quite some time. And we do want to have that as one of the last of the just general steps in reviewing information that's generally available about charters. And then we tried to map out from whom we would gather input and to try to map out a schedule that would keep the committee's work moving. So first it was town staff, and I guess that you did speak, Kate, to a memo at the town's position, but that's not
No.
town staff input that
No.
you're talking about.
Yeah, the
Can you
memo-
distinguish the two?
Yeah, the memo that is in the 2011 is an after the fact, like here are the articles that the charter committee or charter commission decided to move forward. They commented on that. But we know from the 1986, 80s stuff is that there were, what we're traditionally talking about here, there is staff input on what they think might need to be put in the charters. They're two different things, but this one would be, hey, town staff, is there anything that would be helpful to you to have in the charter or taken out of the charter?
So that's scheduled for tonight, you know, with our aspirational calendar here. And I think we were talking essentially every 3 weeks as we tried to map this out when we met in April. I think it was April, late April, early May. We then talked about town boards and committees providing their input. And this is also a matter of trying to build some sort of interest. Because thus far, what have we had? 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings, and we've had 4 or 5 people total attend, and many of them were repeats. So it's not to say that we're not happy to have their interest, but hoping to be able to build some sort of interest. At that point, having gathered information from town staff and town boards and committees, we figured we would go to a select board meeting to see whether they have any priorities and things that they want us to be working on, and then try to turn to the business of gathering public input. And there had been discussion, and this is nice to see this format here, of, didn't we do something this past town meeting about communications? There's a communications position?
Yeah.
Yeah. The communications coordinator is I certainly don't know how to do anything quite this pretty. And this was, you know, a layup for him. But, you know, we assuming we'll come to okay, this number of meetings and these are the real topics, and we get those finalized into a sequence, he can put these together in a way that'll be visually appealing and can launch a more aggressive sort of social media
Let's.
plan.
Rollout, and then also making sure that we have, you know, in the daily press as well. I don't recall seeing, did we get a press release for today's meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I saw it anywhere, I didn't.
I definitely saw it on social media. I was like,
Right.
oh yeah, that was a good reminder. I was like, yes, we have a meeting.
It was in the calendar, in the reformer.
All right.
Oh, good.
See, I didn't see it in the Reformer, I don't look at the calendar, and I don't go on social media, so
That's probably.
glad I have the email.
My only question about about this is one meeting gonna be enough for each topic?
And it's very hard to know at this point.
Yeah.
It's very hard to know, but I think we're gonna get to a point after general information gathering where we wanna start laying out the topics on which we wanna have discussion. And it may be that we're doing the first three sort of meetings, gathering information from town boards, committees, staff, and select board. And then we look at all of what we have, and any other suggestions that we've gotten so far from our preliminary discussions with Bob, recognizing that the school board sections of the charter don't even really need to be there anymore because it's a separate governance structure. So if we can start to gather all the proposed changes that or the proposed topics that are for consideration, that's when we return to public input.
My concern, I think, with these two staff and then the boards is that too much time. I'm on the Parks and Rec board, Rec and Park, but I wouldn't, I don't think we have any. I mean, as a staff person, Carol might, but as a board person, I don't think I would. So that is either wiggle room for staff, or is that like, what do we do with extra time?
Yeah, I think staff will take longer than board and committee input, although I know two committees that wanna have some input.
Okay.
I'm also curious if we think that it's too restrictive to say like, this is the day staff comes, like, could we have like 2 or 3 meetings in committees or staff, or like whoever's available can show up? And I'm also curious about why we would go to a select board meeting instead of inviting them to this meeting as well.
So as to the, right, so as to the first question, my goal was to have a target date that our staff support person can push out to staff, to department heads, and then to boards and committees, so they can consider as part of their regular business what they want to bring back to us. And they can do that in a deliberate, considered manner with a time frame as a target. It's not my goal to prevent people from coming at other times, but I think just the way the town engages in its business, to push something out and say, you need deliberately to go through and determine what it is that you want to propose to us, is a starting point for getting focus on those topics. And then more time is great, unless you disagree.
I don't disagree. I'll comment at the appropriate time.
Right. So, go ahead.
I don't know.
We then, I thought would turn to discussing overview of the way the government functions. So that can include the every 10-year discussion of whether there should be representative town meeting. The mayoral ballot issue was defeated, but those types of questions could then be presented and discussed. And then we could go through the charter section by section to determine if there's anything else that we want to focus on, and then begin working through individual proposed changes. So it seemed, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No, please.
Well, first, I think Hannah wants her question answered, why that we have to go to the select board and not they
Oh.
come to us. And then I have a comment on something.
All right, so, Kate and I sat there and I said, it's not our job to invite them. It's for us to go there because they're the governing body of the town. And, you know, we'll be at that point to say to them, please tell us what is it that you want to have us focus on, if anything. And this is where we stand and sort of have to report back, sort of a due difference sort of a thing.
It's a protocol question, isn't it?
It's like, you know, I don't get to summon select board.
I've
go to them.
I've heard from members of the select board that they would maybe prefer to be invited.
Well, we need all 5 of them at the same time.
I mean, that's why,
That's
you
the problem
know.
too.
We can do a joint meeting
We
sometime.
could.
We want to do it that
Why
way.
would we need all of them? Just because like they are in mass the select board?
Yeah, we need all, I think we have to hear from all 5 of them.
Okay.
At least personally, I do.
Yeah.
Because that's, they appointed us and it's the town and.
I think there's a reasonable question, though, for this body of work as to whether we need to hear from the select board or whether it's sufficient to hear from members of the select board. And that would, I think, make a significant difference in which venue we're talking about.
Patrick, please.
Sure. In line with what Peter just said, I have the same question as to other town committees and boards. Is the commission interested in hearing from various individuals on DRB or planning commission, et cetera? Or are you specifically interested in hearing the planning commission's perspective, the DRB's perspective, et cetera? If it's the latter, then I think there will need to be sufficient time, as you point out, for those bodies to gather whatever opinions they may have. If it's the members, they could probably more easily be rallied to attend a particular meeting.
My position is that we're talking about the bodies submitting to us information. If people have dissenting views or differing views, or individual members, we're certainly interested in hearing their positions as well. But I think we want dedicated focus by all of those subgroups that focus on specific topics to hear what they've decided as a group based upon their individual areas of focus. They'd like to see, if anything, with respect to charter revisions. Go ahead.
No, I agree with that, because I'm on the library board, and we've all talked about this as a group, and as a library board, we're like, we don't have any changes, but that doesn't say, and I don't have any, but if I did, as a person, I would love to come and say, hey, I'm on the library board, the official position of the board is such, but here's what I think. Do you know what I mean? I sort of feel like it is stronger, because you could get 5 separate people coming in saying 5 separate things, and you don't know what the actual, like, what does the board, or committee or commission or whatever think?
Please do.
I think the both and is the right way to go. I think soliciting the various bodies to say, if you have official action of your body that you wish to provide input to the commission, please do that. And explicitly invite individual members who choose to come and offer their own perspective to us to do that, just like we would to any other member of the public. And I similarly think it's important for us to, as we build this, ask for that public input during our information gathering phase, and not just once we start to organize our thoughts, but also to basically hear anything from anybody before we move forward to sort of assess the universe of ideas.
And that's why I want to comment on September 21st. It shouldn't be gather public input about proposed changes. It needs to be gather public input, what does the public, ideas public has?
That's right.
Then we go back after we've gotten everything and go, so there needs to be, public input about proposed changes at the end. Okay, sorry.
Okay, Patrick.
If I can just offer one additional suggestion. Obviously, some of these dates has passed. what I would suggest are probably the 4 next big things that it sounds like you would like to hear from is input from the staff, input from boards and committees, input of some form with the select board, and then a review of other potential charters. Starting in September 21st, which is the Thursday, I think it would be reasonable for us to expect that we could have staff's views organized and be ready to be here for the 21st of September. I think it's fully plausible for this board to meet in some fashion to be agreed upon with the select board at some time in October. So maybe the third Thursday of October if you wanted it to be on your territory, and one of the Tuesdays if you wanted it to be on theirs. November, if we did a meeting in November, that would be enough time to notify each of the committees, if we did so soon, that we'd like to hear from you as a committee or as a body on, in November. That would give them time to warn a meeting, conduct their deliberations and discussions, put something together and have it to you. And then December, that, I don't know if that's enough time, Peter, for you to...
That'd be plenty of time, but I think we should hear, I'd like to personally hear from the public before we talk about, so then we'll have like a universe of ideas in front of us that have come out of our own community, and then could layer onto that things that we've seen in other people's charters that we think are also worthy of some consideration. So I'd rather have that piece come 5th, not because I need an extra month, but just for the way that, the sequence of events. And I have a selfish thing to point out. I'm not asking you, we're about to build some momentum, so I'm not asking you to wait an extra month, but I won't be able to attend a meeting in September. So if we did what Patrick just suggested with the modification I offered, or without it, and started in October, that would work better for me. But if you choose to start in September, you can hear from the staff then, and I can catch up through the minutes or watching the tape.
Yeah, I don't think everybody's gonna be able to come to every meeting.
Yeah.
I
think
I
that's
might
fair.
not be able to come on the 5th of October,
Okay.
'cause I have a medical thing. But
So we're talking at least potentially about,
Well, right now it's paced
The-
out once a month.
once a month and beginning with town staff, like in the 3rd week in September. 3rd week in October for meeting with select board.
So that's the 19th?
That's a Thursday.
Yeah.
If it's our schedule, it would be a Tuesday if it's their schedule.
Right, but I'm just saying, general time frame. We're talking about giving boards enough time to get it together by having a meeting with them, like close to the 3rd week in November, and then having like a general public input meeting. It's just striking the second line over here, just saying gather public input some point in this process. And if we want to meet more frequently during one of these periods, we can do that sometime in between. And then we can either stay on schedule to try to deal with other charters in December, or we can move that off to January. And then hopefully at that point, we'll have a universe of proposed recommendations. I think that we've also talked through the process so far about various things that we might consider looking at. We want to make sure to give time for our proposed changes, and whether that happens at the public input meeting or some other time. I'm interested to hear what everybody thinks. Because we've not really heard each other speak about what we want to address.
I'd like to do that after we hear from staff and committees and the public, so that,
So it might even be what we think they said was good, you know what I mean? It could just not even be what we thought of on our own, but, oh, I like that suggestion.
Yeah.
Or I don't like it.
That's what I was thinking.
I guess a clarifying question, are you asking that we set a time that says it's just our time to say the things out loud, or are an encouragement along the way to say at each meeting, oh, that's interesting, or yeah, I'm on board with that?
Both. Both.
Okay.
I want to make sure that there's a dedicated time for us to hear each other outline what proposed charter revisions we think should be considered.
I think that's already reflected actually in your tentative sequence, because obviously it's not going to happen on October 5th, but on October 5th, it says review and discuss possible changes to town government. Feels like that's sort of, we're taking stock of it, and that's an opportunity then for each of us to insert additional ideas into the mix.
So I would then just modify October 5 to say and board discussion?
Yeah.
Sure.
Commission?
And are we thinking,
Commission
at
discussion.
least initially, that this might be a subject for February?
January, February?
Yeah.
If
January, February. And is everybody comfortable with a once a month approach here?
Yes, but I would note that the third week of November is Thanksgiving.
I'm sorry?
The third week of November is Thanksgiving.
Right. Well, there's that.
So, no.
I think we're gonna wind up leaving it to Patrick to try to deal with dates.
Good. I could certainly make some propose
Right.
and put something together.
But with that general sequence, Peter,
And I think the monthly rhythm is appropriate because of the work that we're gonna wanna do in between in terms of just like reflecting and maybe doing some additional reading and so on. And because one or more of these intervals, we may find, as you pointed out earlier, that, you know, we don't get it all done in one evening and wanna come back and do another. It would leave us a little bit of room where every 3 weeks would be tougher to keep up with, I think. But if we plan out for once a month, we have some room to meet more frequently, occasionally if we need to, and it gets us into the early part of the new year, really sort of moving forward substantively with getting to action.
So
Which is a lot quicker, I might add. I think we might find that we slow down somewhere along the way, especially once we get to discussing and deciding recommendations.
Yeah.
The most recent commission was a 3-year process, and the one before that was a 2-year process, and we're on a timeline to try to do this in about 8 months, so I wouldn't be surprised if we need a little more time.
right,
So we're talking the 21st or around the 21st of September, October 19th. Sometime in November for the committees. Sometime in December
public.
for the public, and January for Peter. And whoever's working with him.
Yeah.
And Patrick, I'll just ask you to get us another draft of this with those dates and begin working towards having input from those bodies
Very good.
scheduled out. And then, after all that data is gathered, we're talking about further process, section by section amendments, and working through individual proposed changes, which will wind up being pushed into the time frame around next town meeting. Is everybody comfortable with proceeding in that way? And that way, we'll have this sort of being pushed out now with that schedule from staff, rather than feeling like it's just an ad hoc skip from meeting to meeting. That's what I was hoping to start moving past. Cool. Is there anything else that people feel we should be including in this process?
It doesn't answer that, but a quick plug that when this is ready, I think it might be good for town staff and then the boards as well to get something like this to like warn them for the next ones. Like, yes, your staff is preparing the first one, the committees and boards or this other one. And there's a public one, so if you are not of like mind, you can still come and give individual, so it's an extra, because we will have a timeline, that we will be able to keep pushing it out to folks, so they know it's in their hands. Does that make sense?
Could you try that just one more time?
Yeah, but when this is, when this is prepared and ready, and then you warn the staff,
Yep.
that will trickle down to warn the boards, because theirs will be the month afterwards. And then that same warning though, for the staff, that is for the boards, is for the public, to remind the committees, if they are not of like mind of their committee, they can come to the public portion. And it just is a third, fifth layer of communicating to the public that they are invited to every step along the way. And in their email box directly.
I think what you're saying, and I think we all want the same thing, is that a member of the public can come in at any time, at any meeting, and say what they want. So it's like making sure that everybody understands what the schedule is, like from now until where we schedule it to. Is that what you're saying? And then every time we put something out, we can say, here's the meeting schedule going forward.
And it becomes a personal invitation to those folks that are already involved. Now we just need to figure out the public invitation to those that might not feel involved.
Mhm.
So would it be in keeping with what you're recommending to make sure there was a statement in the language on something like this that said members of the public are invited to every meeting? Is that?
Yeah.
And are encouraged to attend, are welcome and encouraged, language along those lines.
Yeah.
Says that committee, it's the commission, wants to hear from you. Take part in this unique process, vote early, vote often.
Yeah, I don't know why it feels just a little different that that just to make sure that the staff knows, and then the board knows, and then there is this extra one, and it probably will be covered because of this beautiful infograph, but just one of those, it just feels like an extra good thing that will come out, hopefully, from this.
So just, the management team has already begun discussing issues in the charter, and truth is, most of the departments don't really have much to say, but some have something to say. Town clerk's office has something to say, and I have tried, or am thinking that I would try and consolidate that into a single, body of information to bring forward with you, and any of the department heads are interested in coming to the meeting and speaking. I think that would be useful. I'm hoping to try and keep you from hearing from 13 different people that, we should probably pull the school, from the charter, school reference, and, a new issue, more modern understanding of pronouns, et cetera. Rather than hearing that 13 different times and in 13 different ways, trying to consolidate that into a single set of sort of recommendations or suggestions. I also know that the town attorney has been taking a look at the charter and thinking of some thoughts on his own and from his own perspective. I'll talk to Bob when he's back from vacation, but I would think he would be able to attend that meeting. Let's hope he can attend that meeting. But we would ask him to sort of consolidate his he's got a few things that he'd like to discuss with you. And maybe so that first meeting in September could be, this is what we've heard from the department heads, and any and all are welcome. And here's what's on a town attorney's mind, et cetera, if that works.
Yeah.
Sure, yes, please. I know that Kate has been willing and has prepared press releases in the past, but Joy is expressing interest in, seeing something very specific communicated. And so I would
Okay.
ask,
Yeah.
what I would ask is that the next version of this
Patrick and or the communications director collaborate with you to make sure that the way you want to see that communicated is appropriately
I think that's fair.
reflected in here, you know?
Yeah.
We did have a meeting, Joy, Patrick, and Seth, way back, didn't it feel like 100 years ago?
Was it May?
Yeah, so we did have a meeting to preliminary talk about this stuff, and that's how this came. And there were little things, but I think it is a good idea.
Because part of what we talked about early on was trying to find a way to push this out.
Yeah.
And at some point, we will probably want to consider the possibility of a mailing or some sort of bulk email, however we communicate just with residents of the town about these issues. And so we want to keep that in mind. Will there be an appropriate time when we're trying to gather public input to reach out to everybody, and in what form would that take? And it sounds like the two of you might be,
We were on, Patrick helped us, we were on top of it.
right? Very well
We're
situated
certainly
to
at
consider
your
that.
disposal, so.
I mean, we said this to the communications director and staff person, and like the EMS for pushing it out for the select board is really great. I think that's helpful for people to plan, and so, yeah, very happy that we will also have a visual for folks.
Great. So, go ahead, Mike.
Has anybody given any thought to, once we start gathering input and hearing from people, having it on Zoom
Oh, yeah.
so that people can watch it live? And there might be some people that want to come, that can't come to meetings, that might want to comment.
Would a first step be to make sure that everyone knows about us and knows how they can communicate with the email that we have and the other forms to first see if there's an interest before dedicating staff time?
Well, we have BCTV, and they help us with the Zoom on, for DRB, for example.
And it's also too,
And we found it very helpful,
yeah,
because we have architects and people like that who are working on projects here in Brattleboro, but they live, you know, Springfield or whatever, and they can present on Zoom. And we also have at least one person on the DRB who is not very mobile. And so she's able to come to meetings. And so I don't know whether we need to wait. I mean, we can do it on Zoom. We can, when you do the publicity, we can give the link, and then if people don't want to see it, then they won't tune in.
Kate?
yeah, well, and I'm sorry, Maya, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's also, we need to be inclusive somehow and make sure we're not just sitting here and nobody, you know, I mean, we have to get out. And if we're just relying upon somebody to physically come in here and telling us what they think, you know, I think we need to think about that, you know?
I also am in favor of making a Zoom link available for all of our meetings, if it's something that can be done with a minimum of burden. It was a potential technological nightmare to do it for representative town meeting, but it's a totally different animal here.
Yeah.
Because we're not restricted attendance, and we're not needing to call on people in a certain order. So I think that's a great idea, to have the Zoom available, unless there's objection from anybody doing it that way. You know, and then whatever outreach is available, that's what we should do. Cool. So I think that covers both agenda items 5 and 6. And what we're gonna look forward to is having Patrick work with Seth. Did I learn a new name?
Yes, yeah.
And Joy and Kate, if she's interested, and
We'll see a draft come back to me, Kate, after you and Seth and Joy have a chance to go over it. And then we'll circulate this to the entire board before the schedule is set and the next meeting is set. And then we'll look forward to a meeting in September where, was it October or September? I don't remember. How it was.
September 21st.
September 21, where we're starting to hear from town staff. Cool.
At
Peter,
6:15.
go ahead.
One more observation about this, looking at the tag end of it, I think the way this is shaped up is great. I really appreciate the Zoom suggestion. I think that making ourselves more accessible is a good thing, and so I really appreciate the conversation we've had and where we've landed. I have a lingering concern about something very picky, which is the last two items on the second page of this timeline. I believe that once we get to the stage of the February meeting of reviewing and discussing, that we'll need more than one meeting for that, and then, you know, probably more than one for each of the, I think that our pace is going to slow down because our depth of consideration is going to go deeper. And so I think it's fine to do a more specific timeline right up to that February meeting of reviewing and discussing, and then there ought to be a more generic way of describing where we intend to go from there instead of dates.
Patrick, go ahead.
That makes sense.
If it's, I think, what would I say? What if we were to revise this, if we're gonna be meeting monthly, we've got about 6 months worth, and then beyond that, it begins to get a little vague. What if we held off on what happens then until, you know, maybe we're 3 or 4 months from now, and we're starting to get a better idea as to how that looks. We can obviously amend this, adjust this, improve upon it, extend it, and so on.
No objection from the chair.
Yeah, no, sounds good.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea. Spoon.
Well, just a little bit of interesting, of a sidelight. It was a nice little moment. As I was walking in the door, Peter was volunteering to read through the annotated state charters. 15 years ago, I sat at a table with a group of other people working on the charter, looking at the same book, and he said, well, how are we going to deal with this? And one of the members raises their hand and said, I'll do that. Corky's dead. But, all right, so the charter, if you look at its form, you find the same form in almost all charters in this state and everywhere. And it's not so dissimilar from constitutions all over the place, because they're all social compacts. And the charter is in a very natural order. It starts by having a picture of the whole, who we are, and then goes into a little history, and then what are the principles, and da-da-da-da. Then it begins to lay out the larger things, what makes up, who, I mean, if you read through the charter, it's in a very natural and order that we function as human beings, working from the large to the specific. And I bring that up, even within sections, you have the name of a section, and then the name of a subsection, and then parts of that identified in paragraphs and what have you. So, given that order is very natural, and one thing naturally leads to another, my recommendation is that you just consider your agenda as going through it from beginning to end. Because everything that you'll want to talk about is going to come up that way. And there'll be some new things, but they will come up in the natural place where they would want to be. So instead of perhaps what sounded like picking out certain things and and starting there and jumping here or there. So the other thing is, I don't think it would be wise to put timelines on anything, because you're not going to know until you get into an issue how complex it is, how people feel about it, how far you want to go into it, how much information is gonna, you just don't know, and you know that, David, you just don't know what's gonna happen at a meeting. The smallest item becomes very big, and the big item suddenly flies by so easy. You can't tell, you can't predict. But if you put timelines, we want to have this finished by, you put a certain pressure on yourself, and that pressure intensifies as you get near timelines. Your impatience begins to grow, and you don't do as good a work. So just let it flow. That's my advice. Start at the beginning, began the begun, and let it flow. The most important thing is just to keep that each individual fulfills what they say they're going to do, and you keep moving steadily, and you'll get there. And it may not be 8 months, but whatever it is, it'll feel right. You'll feel like you covered the ground you were expected to cover and that you wanted to cover. So, all that aside, there was one more point that I wanted to bring up. And this is what really brought me back, because I was in sight of my beer. and I just stopped the car and made a U-turn and came back. And what are you doing? You know, what is it? What is a charter? Why is there a charter? Why does our charter read the way it does? You know, it didn't come out of thin air. It was, I wasn't here. A lot of the authorship was assigned to a guy, Bob Gannett, but it didn't appear to him in a dream either. He was born and raised in Concord, New Hampshire. Concord, Massachusetts, which was one of a number of Massachusetts towns that had a representative town meeting. So there are long histories to everything, and I do suggest when you look at other charters that you look around a little bit, particularly Massachusetts, because they're the ones that have the age. They're long in the tooth. And the other thing is, this is interesting, I think. For me, a charter, what you're doing is you're trying to take a political system, democracy, and write it in a way that we can live by it. How you're I don't know what's the word, it's not translating, but something. You're taking a philosophy, you're taking principles, ideas, and you are recreating them with specific ways of living that reflect that philosophy that supposedly we have all subscribed to. And that's not an easy thing to do, because it requires an understanding of democracy. But the whole charter is a document intended to enable us to live democratically in a democracy. And I say that in part because it's easy to get lost. It happens all the time, everywhere. When you're at a moment when you're on the cusp of change, and the argument against it is, this is the way we've always done it. You know, it's the Southerner talking to the Yankee. You know, we lived like this for 200 years. Who are you to come down here and tell us that we don't have the right way of life? and you assign a legitimacy to something just because it's old, although usually what comes along with that is nobody remembers why it was done that way in the first place, which is important, which is also what I'm saying again, is to look for the roots where you can find them.
Thank you, Spoon.
Thank you.
I think that there are a number of things that we've got in place here that actually give voice to some of the things Spoon has said. I mean, the initial part of the work here has been to try to make sure that we understand the roots of where we're coming from. And while we're setting the timeline for the next 6 months, it's really information gathering schedule to give people enough time to begin putting their thoughts together so that we have the information we need, and then we're actually leaving how the process is going to unfold and how we're going to review everything. Sort of vague because it's 6 months out, and whoever said that we've got an 8-month timeline, they just don't remember when we were commissioned, because I think that we were appointed in December. And so, see you, Spoon. And you know, we by the time we get to the end of input, it will already be the end of the first round of input. It'll already be a full year.
Yeah.
You know, so 2-year process is probably what we're looking at right now. Cool. I think that's what I was hoping to accomplish here. Is there any other business that anybody wants to attend to tonight?
Is there a preferred meeting start time, 6:15, 6:30?
Just.
No, I'm not referring
It's
to you
just my fault.
necessarily.
You know,
We had some folks show up at 6,
We had
some show up at
6:15,
6:15, and some 6:30.
So we were all confused.
Denise
Some guys
is
not all.
better for her. I work till 6,
You work till 6?
yeah, but I'm like 2 minutes away.
well then 6:15, and I'll just know that, you know, I never came to select board meeting late.
No, you never
Yeah, I
did.
never
we do
did.
have-
Denise,
like-
would you rather 6:30?
No.
So you have a little more time? No, you'd rather have
I
6:15?
just, yeah.
And I'll just know 6:15.
6:15.
Cool,
That's the way it is.
excellent. Well, I guess we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. And Patrick, we'll give you Spoon's memo here, and you'll copy and circulate it if you would.
Excellent.
I'll give it to you.
Partnering with you